Hi, Andrea. I can't hear anybody.
We're just not quite ready, but I'll unmute when we are.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Alyssa, you there?
Yes, I am.
We're here.
All righty.
We're ready to go. All right, good evening, everyone. Here, 7:02 p.m. on the second day of October, otherwise known as the lead-in to Halloween. We are calling to order the Democratic Caucus meeting for the Queenston Common Council. We have a number of items to consider to discuss tonight. A lot of these are financial. So we'll start with resolution 150. This is authorizing the transfer of $1,100 in the mayor's account regarding internal transfers. So it's a $0 impact. Everybody okay with that one?
Yes.
Discussion. Resolution 2, authorizing the transfer of $28,912 in public works to cover unexpected expenses and budget shortfall. Again, because that's internal, it's a $0 impact. Everybody okay with that?
Yep.
All right, we might as well just say we're done. All right, 152, authorizing the transfer of $50,315 in the Arts and Cultural Affairs budget to support the hiring of consultant services and unanticipated expenses. And this one's covered by a NOVO grant. So yes, that will not cost us any money. So again, 0% financial impact. The money flows through us. So that's basically what we're approving. 153, authorizing the transfer of $23,225 in parks and recreation, again, to account for some internal transfers. So again, $0 impact, assuming everyone's okay with that. 154, authorizing the transfer of $3,889.42 in the clerk's budget to balance account. This is also $0. About this one. So I'm just looking at my notes here. Okay. 155, transfer of $42,000 in the health and wellness budget for a wayfinding plan for the Kingston Green Line network of trails and streets. This is also $0 impact, covered by a grant. Resolution 156. So this and the next are, I think, the ones that are just authorizing the submission of applications. This one is to the New York State Department of Health for a healthcare and mental hygiene worker bonus grant for up to 60 firefighters in the amount of $90,000 to execute any and all related documents, and if awarded, to expend funds in the first instance. This would be a flat amount per worker. In essence, it's free money for our firefighters, except the city will be picking up some of the benefit costs, well, not benefit costs, but FICA. So there will ultimately be a minimal amount of money that the city puts into this, but otherwise, it's a well-deserved bonus, if you will, to our firefighters. We appreciate very much the work that they do. We've been proud to work with their union time and time again to have successful contract negotiations. 157, authorizing the mayor to expend funds in the first instance for the 2023 Rebuilding American Infrastructure with Sustainability and Equity discretionary grant from the U.S. Department of Transportation for the Weaving the Waterfront Transportation Project. This one is also, this would be this one has a big impact. $21 million grant, which requires a later match through bonding requests. Ruth Ann, though, will try to cover some of this via grants. So basically, at this point, the financial impact to us would be $5,754,439. This, of course, I'm pretty sure will be going to a bond. So this is asking for the expenditure of monies in the first instance, which allows the current projects to go forward. Questions about that? Issues, concerns? Yes.
Yes. How do we know exactly what amount of funds are going to be expended? Or is that just the number that you read?
That's the number that we have right now, but our hope is that that number will be reduced if Ruth Ann is able to find some other grants for this kind of a project.
You have 5 sentences to describe the reason why project letter. Anywhere up to 5 sentences.
That would be the other thing that I can
Sorry.
What was the question about?
description
Just a little
of
more
a
detail
detailed
about what this is.
waterfront project.
Such an elegant term, I don't know.
I think there's something on Engage Kingston, right?
Right.
Yeah,
This was the
but-
grant, the big grant, it was just awarded, and this is the initial expenditure, is that what this is? No.
This is the grant.
No.
Competing for this grant, right? This is a.
We just won this grant.
Oh, they did?
Yeah,
That's what I thought.
But it has costs to us.
Oh, but it was the really big grant that everybody
Yes,
was
so there's-
raw about, right?
Yeah, they presented different plans that they're going to do with the different parks and raising streets.
There's a whole lot of stuff going on.
Yeah, so it has to go to design
It's
before we
the
know.
great Wanda renovation that we've been waiting for 25 years. Okay, that's my
Does
answer.
this
Thank
include
you.
the complete streets?
And thank you.
Part of it will
With
be,
the signage?
yeah, the part of it will be the trails down there and raising them.
Finishing, I think it's we have phase 1, phase 2, so I think it's phase 3
That's
of
gone.
the rail trail, so connecting where it stops at Gargan's, and then they'll be connecting that to Kingston Point, and then the other part is raising, like literally raising a street for all the flooding that is occurring and going to continue to occur unless we start doing stuff like that. Those are 2 pieces that I remember part of, but they don't even have to design yet. Seeking the,
Thank you, I'm good with
does
what.
that help, Carl?
Yeah, it's all I was hoping for, just a little, just a taste of what is.
All right. Then 158, authorizing the settlement in the matter of Nina Baum at 199 Wall Street. This is something we discussed with our city assessor. So this is a legal case. If anybody wants to discuss this further, we need to do it with our attorney in an attorney-client session. Other than that, we who are on the finance committee heard the case and all agreed that this was a suitable outcome in this particular instance. So anything more than that, I'm afraid we'll have to go into session.
Well, we don't have our lawyer with us today, so any questions, reach out to either Dan Baker or court counsel tomorrow.
Yes.
Okay.
We only have a half lawyer.
All right, sometimes a half lawyer is better than none. All right, 159, resolution of the common council affirming the attached Ulster County resolution related to the tax sharing agreement. So this is very much the same as what we've had before. There's a little bit more protection for us. And it also doesn't have the same kinds of, the last time we had one of these, there were several riders that were not really germane to the tax sharing agreement. So this is a cleaner agreement.
Sorry.
Exclamation point.
And is this something that was reviewed in the finance committee? Okay.
Yeah, so basically it's the agreement between us and the county. How much of the county sales tax comes to us?
Yes.
There's also revenue sharing with the towns. And so what this does is if there's above a certain amount, we get an extra 1% that we don't have to share with the towns.
Okay.
All right, so it's a slightly better deal, marginally better deal than we had before.
And I can see a copy of this in all of the pages that were sent.
Yeah, it's in the long version.
In the long version.
Yeah, which unfortunately the one I have is not in the same order as the numbers here, so. All right, so if everybody's okay with that one. Then resolution 160, amending section 1 of resolution 204 of 2022, which is,
That's from the second one, the rules, yeah.
okay,
That's the apprenticeship program?
that's the apprenticeship program. Yep. So the basic, well, can you tell us, that was in laws and rules, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was just, what we did was amend a part of the resolution. If you all read the resolution, there was language in here about, the trade, specific language. And so we removed that language.
While keeping the 30%,
Everything
so
else.
kind of a compromise.
Mhm.
And then we further agreed to keep the conversation going because obviously things aren't quite settled, so we feel like this is a good compromise moving forward. And Becky and Carl volunteers, they didn't even have to be voluntold, they volunteered to keep the conversation moving and so that we could really make sure that we develop a good plan to have a strong apprenticeship program.
Right, and just so you know, we did hear from both sides of the aisle. When they came in, he spoke to us and told us their thoughts on things, and like Andrea said, we thought this was a fair, balanced compromise.
For now.
And how did they feel?
Nobody's happy,
Well,
but that's
yeah, you
usually a
know,
compromise.
Nobody got punched
Can't make
in the
everybody
face or
happy.
anything, right?
Can't make everybody happy, but we certainly can try to do what we thought was best for both sides.
Okay.
Just a quick question, is there any kind of a sort of a time frame for this so that, say, in 4 months, we come back and look at it again and see if where the discussion
Well, I'm
progressed or
hoping
not?
we could do it in less time than 4 months, but since Rennie and Carl are leading the charge on that, I'll let them come up with their own timeline, but we didn't talk about an official timeline.
Right, and I remember that, but it just occurred to me that it's not gonna, we don't want it to stretch out too long because this is just an interim.
Randy and I have actually not sat down and talked about specifics, but I will note that I have 3 common council meetings left before I stop being a common council. So I am good for
We're gonna give you an
December.
extension, just.
You can give me an extension. I need somebody to negotiate for me.
And we'll reduce your pay to 0 to make sure you're not influenced by that kind of monetary.
Thank you, that's really good for me.
Yeah. We're always thinking ahead. And
Yes, we are all kidding, thank you, up there in you and me.
there are some concerns that there were unintended consequences with this legislation, so we want to look more deeply into the data. There's a lot of kind of complicated issues that have come up, so we just think that the better thing is to do a much deeper investigation of what's involved, what's at stake, and how to come up with a solution that we clearly want to protect apprenticeship programs. We clearly want workers who are building our buildings and working in our sewers and other construction projects to be experts in what they do. The question is, how do we best support that without necessarily undermining local businesses? So that's the kind of basic issue
Yeah,
that
and
we're
for,
working on.
oh, sorry.
So why don't we just leave it as it is until we figure out what it is we want to do instead of keep changing it and going back and forth?
Because it seems like there are unintended consequences that are costing the city lots of money with that particular line. And so that's the one that's problematic. That's the one that people have put a red flag on, is saying it's reducing the ability of local contractors who are not union shops to bid on projects and to do work for the city. So, yeah.
It's also, we're also unable to influence, to really administer it. You know, there's requirements in the bill as it stands about things like about the number of graduates. There are things that we have no control over, nor do we have any real knowledge of. So in essence, we've put a condition on bidders that we can't check. You know, there's no way for us to know whether that's happening or not, whether they're lying to us or not, you know. So that's one of the reasons to take out that one sentence, because there's no way for us to figure that out.
The larger step for me, the summary is that we are all on a learning curve here and we're not all the way up the learning curve. And the question is, where do we settle while we're climbing the ladder? And this struck me as a very fair sort of middle ground to land on. Fran?
And we're just going back to the language that we operated on for 10 years, except that was my original
Except we're
ask.
adding.
And then last week or a couple of weeks ago, we added that to 30%. So it is still going a little bit more than the 10%, or what we have for the 10 years. We're not getting rid of the apprenticeship program,
Right.
anything like that. It's just that one thing, that, again, put a Band-Aid on this problem, which anybody who served with me longer than a few months knows I hate Band-Aids, but I think it's appropriate for here to just figure out these unintended consequences that Renee mentioned.
Yes, Steve.
Yes, I just want to thank you guys for putting in such a good effort on this. I think we can all agree an apprenticeship program is a good thing. How we get there, that's the problem. I'm happy that we're working towards something that's going to be hopefully satisfactory with both groups. It did seem like for a while we were heading toward, we were going to have to vote on something that was going to be a win-lose situation. I'm hoping that's not going to be the case, but this is the first step anyway. But thank you guys for putting in so much time on this. Appreciate it.
Thank
Can you
you.
give another person on your ad hoc committee?
Sure.
No, actually, we can't,
Oh.
not you.
Not you,
Oh,
because you're on the
besides
same
committee.
committee.
Because
Oh,
you're
on the same committee.
Can I explain that just so
Yeah.
people
Oh,
don't
yeah,
think
yeah.
it's you personally? Because this is a laws and rules issue.
Got it.
And Rennie and Carl are already on laws and rules. We add you, who is also on laws and rules. We have a quorum of the committee.
Okay, thank you for that explanation.
So, yeah.
But I can resign. I haven't signed a contract yet.
And I'm in the same position as Carl, so.
Oh, right.
Step in.
Yeah, it's not complete, but we could, I just,
Well, the other thing, I think we're also not planning to do it in, at least I'm not planning to do it in darkness, right? So we could continue to share what we learned.
Yeah.
And keep people apprised of new developments.
Yeah, I mean, we could do things like come to laws and rules each meeting and people can report on how it's progressing and people can chip in there, so we could keep it on the agenda.
So in other words, if I'm doing some research and find out some things, I can bring it to laws and rules since I'm on that committee and I can share it with the committee?
Yes.
Okay.
Sure.
Yeah, it's just, we can't do anything behind closed doors.
Got it.
Yep, breaking open meeting law, and that would be a quorum of laws and rules.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, so one of the things is looking at what other cities do.
Exactly.
So, if you want to do that,
I'd
and
be happy to do that.
yeah, you could send, I guess, send the information you get to Rita, who could then
Okay.
farm it out. Would that be appropriate?
Yeah.
In terms of open meetings?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sharing information is fine, email, just can't debate
Wait, we won't discuss.
on, in the meeting.
Okay, okay. Thank you for that clarification.
Anything else? Question?
Everybody good on that, then?
Everybody good on that then?
I have a lot of questions, but.
Yeah. Well, exactly. We've got a lot of questions, and that's why we want to settle them before we put something.
Are we good with this? Does everybody feel fairly comfortable?
I'm gonna be a no vote.
No.
If we don't know what we're doing, Yeah.
I don't.
Why don't you feel comfortable?
Because I don't know enough about the process, about how we come to an understanding, conclusion on both sides, and what does a fair compromise look like on both sides?
We don't know yet. That's why we want to do more work.
Yeah, and that's
But
why,
at
But
the
we're
same
not voting on
time,
that tomorrow.
That's not the vote.
that isn't the vote.
No. The vote is simply to move the one line that refers to the requirement
specific.
of 3 trade-specific graduates in each of the last 5 years.
And why would that be, I guess, conducive, or why would that be a step forward?
Because we've got some prima facie evidence that is making it very difficult for a lot of local contractors to submit bids for city contracts. Okay, prima facie evidence, we don't know. It could be that there's something deeper to look at. But, this is the way that it's kind of playing out, is that it's this question of who can actually bid on jobs. What does that mean in terms of the amount of money that the city has to pay out for construction bids? And so, we only passed this a few months ago. And to some degree, we've seen some what appear to be detrimental effects. So we'd like to make sure we don't have those detrimental effects.
And in that case, the city paying more.
So if there's, say, just say there are 5 bidders and the 2 lowest bidders don't pass the apprenticeship test because of those price-specific requirements, the 3rd bidder gets it, and that costs $500,000, $1 million, $1.5 million to the city. And that is the prima facie. Now, there may be good reasons, we have to go deeper, but for now, just based on this very simple, sort of superficial overlay, it seems like it's better to not be as stringent, at least until we come up with a policy that we all believe is best for everyone.
What did both sides think about that line being added?
It's not being added, nothing is being.
It was that.
It was in there.
It was in there.
It was in there. We're amending it to remove it. Just that line.
Okay.
So maybe to clarify, about 10 months ago or so, we passed a law revising our apprenticeship rules for people who bid, for companies that bid on construction contracts. And on the face of that, it looked like it was pretty simple. You're requiring businesses of a certain size that they need to have an apprenticeship program and need to have kind of minimal levels of graduation. It turns out, though, that so the 30% graduation rate, which is in the 2nd clause, it requires any business that has an apprenticeship program, any employer supplier has an apprenticeship program, it requires them to have 30% graduates over X amount of time. That's fine. That hasn't bothered anybody. Everybody on all sides agrees that's important to have. That if you're going to have an apprenticeship program, it should be producing graduates. But then the other one, the 3 trade-specific graduates in each of the last 5 years, puts a kind of onus on smaller construction companies, because if you start doing the numbers, they start to appear like you need a lot of apprentices if you're going to apply if you're going to bid on a contract. We want to be much more clear on how all of that works. And we've gotten some testimony from different people saying that there appears to be, because of that rule, the 3rd one, the 3 trade-specific graduates each of the last 5 years, that's making it difficult for a lot of local area construction companies to bid on contracts.
Because they can't.
Because they can't meet that.
Requirement.
Because that's asking a lot of a small business to do, especially because you don't really understand it, but they all do business differently, so they might not even be training people in all 3 trades for all of them.
I guess, like I said, then you have to follow the data. How do we prove that is the case, and that's at some point, I guess that's.
This is what our mission is to frankly drill down and figure out what the hell's going on and what we can do to treat people right. And I know that it's the first time I've come in and gone, I have my brains blown out trying to understand this stuff. So let's just put a pause on everything, try to educate ourselves. And the question is, where do we land when we're in this pause? And the collective wisdom of laws and rules was, it's best to keep the 30% requirement and but strip out the 3 trades for now.
Right, which is going to hurt the larger businesses. Right, but may hurt the smaller ones.
You gotta remember, this apprentice program has been in the city's requirement from like 2002. You know, it's not new. What's new is this tweaking. And that's what's caused the problem. So for many years, it was fine, nobody complained, everything was great. This recent tweak has caused some people to be worried.
So we're
There's
just
been a lot of
going, so we're
education
just
on all the
going.
small
Of course. Yeah.
Now,
Of course, that's an issue.
open shop contractors
Yeah.
feel disadvantaged by this.
Yeah.
Yeah, so and so we were gonna go back to the original language that was there a year ago, decided last month to only half go back to the original language. So we're still better off where we were a year ago, but in one sense, the same place where we were a year ago, where apprenticeship programs were up and well and running. So, and again, it's just to kind of put a Band-Aid on the issue, see how bad the issue is, and then take it from there.
So just for point of clarification, before this new law was passed, what was the apprenticeship? Was there any kind of apprenticeship percentage of graduates that was in the law?
There was no.
So that was just for Drew's and my benefit, that was what was added,
Well,
in addition to the specific graduates.
They also lowered the threshold of contracts that require apprentices. The original one was like $1 million.
I see,
They
okay.
lowered that for 20 years, and then added this requirement.
And that's another variable, at what level does it kick in, right?
Right, and we're
It's
keeping
really
it out
complicated,
there.
trust me, it's really complicated.
And this is why it should be either tabled or something, so we can come back.
And we are effectively tabling it, it's just
We're
like,
not
how's the table laid out, right?
Not tabling it.
Effectively, I said, Michelle, it is in effect, this whole analysis, we are
It's still.
relaying so that we can do it judiciously and wisely going forward. And the question is, the table's a bit uneven, how do we even the table just for
For
the next
now.
couple
Just
months
for now.
until we have it.
So
That's
it's
what
not, it's not, this is not the final thing.
Nowhere
This is
close.
just trying to stop the bleeding on one side.
Okay.
Well, sometimes that's why we walk out of the emergency room with the Band-Aid until sometimes we just gotta get well on our own, right?
My question is, what defines a small business if they operate in 6 states? What defines a small business that can't have this number of graduates if they're not participating in a real apprenticeship program to begin with? So I think there's a lot of,
Excellent questions. That's what
Great question, and that's what we hope to be digging into in the next 2 to 3 months, right?
well, I'm not comfortable voting
Whether-
on
We find
changing.
out if they're operating, if it's a real apprentice program versus.
No, if, there's a question of what's the actual size of a company. A company might say, we've got 60 employees, but if they regularly use a large number of contract employees, what does that say?
Yeah, but okay, here's the complicator on that. I'm a small contractor and I'm a union shop. I have access to training facilities that are broad. If I'm an open shop, I don't. So the question becomes, if you're a union shop contract, you have an advantage in the training available to apprentices and to the ability to get apprentices. If you're an open shop contractor, you don't, you have to come up with another way. And this woman from Syracuse is one way, there are other ways out there. It really comes down to union or open shop.
Right, but if that's the business's choice to be open shop, then that's the gamble they take in going into business. So
And in essence, this prohibits them from competing for this work.
here in Kingston, but if they're, have they had to lay off? This is where I'm saying, like, a business, or have they had to lay off people in the last year? This one business, this is all I've heard from one business. Have we heard, how many businesses have we heard from?
I've heard from a couple others, and also it's not only just about the businesses, but it's about how much we expect our taxpayers to be paying for these projects, and when we have less bidders, the price goes up on things. So that actually was originating my concern on this, is I don't want the taxpayers to be paying, things are just so, that was my incentive, yes, is for the taxpayers. It wasn't to appease one side or to oppose one side. It was about the taxpayers of Kingston and these great projects that we have going on. We all know how many projects we have, but if each of them is more expensive because we have less bidders on it, then I think that means we should stop and consider this. And so that's where I'm thinking. It's not one side versus the other, which in the last couple of months, that's what this conversation has become, because we're not, whatever decision that we decide to do, we're going to upset somebody, one of these sides, or both sides will be upset. Most likely, if we can find a compromise, everybody's going to be slightly upset. So, but for me, it's about protecting the taxpayers. And the prices that we aren't getting as many bids. So the prices are going up. And we want to continue to do all these projects that we have. And construction is already so much more expensive in the last, 5 years or so. I don't think that's going down anymore. I want to keep seeing all these great infrastructure projects. And I worry about the toll this takes on the residents of Kingston. And so that's where I'm going. And it's just become a side versus side issue, which honestly, that really saddens me. I feel like here we are, all Democrats voting to decide if we're union or small or, local business. And that shouldn't be the conversation. It should be about right now, the only thing that I can see is, considering the taxpayers. Off soapbox.
Did somebody say this is really complicated?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just of the opinion that if we don't have the answer right now, and we still need to have a committee to move forward to figure it out, then we shouldn't be changing anything at this point.
We did change something.
That's-
We did change, and you can vote, that's why we're having.
Yeah, so I'm just gonna say,
That's
no,
what we're-
it's that, yeah.
And I do appreciate everybody listening, even though I just said I don't like the conversation about one side versus side. I do appreciate everybody here listening to everybody, because I know how hard it is, especially knowing all of you as good people and wanting to help unions and small businesses or local contractors. And this is not an easy decision. So I appreciate everything that you've been doing, but I think, again, my intention for bringing this forward was to save the taxpayers.
Robert? Right, yeah, just a second. What's the word? Fire.
You got
Right,
any other
that's
questions?
the word.
No.
All right, so that's 160, 161. Speaking of unions, this is approving the MOA, memorandum of agreement between City of Kingston and CSEA, Local 1000, AFSCME, AFL-CIO, overarching union 2. Kingston City, Unit 8951, Ulster County, Local 856, covering the period December 31, 2021 through December 31, 2025. In our discussions about this, was this in laws and rules?
No, this is fine.
Finance, okay.
I'm working on mine.
That's why I've got all these notes.
It doesn't go through.
All right,
I actually originally had it gone to laws and rules, and the mayor had requested that I put it on finance because John Toohey was quite involved in the negotiations. He couldn't make it to laws and rules, but because also the numbers and also because of the second resolution, which I've technically recused myself from, but you'll understand there's a connection between those two, and it made more sense. So it was a request from the mayor that I did that. Because
so the high points are, so it's 4-year contract, which is a little longer than my experience with these. It's a 2% increase for 2021, which is back pay, basically. Then it increases 3.25% over the course of the next 3 years, which is higher than what we usually do. This again is to show our appreciation of these union workers, to show that we understand the difficulties they face, to make us also more competitive in the market for labor here in Kingston. Since there are other entities that hire these same workers. There's increased longevity in it. And the financial impact of the city is going to be $4,111,416. On the other side, for the first time, or I'm not sure if it's the first time, but for the first time in a while, it adds mandatory overtime for DPW. So one of the big issues that we've had is in the wintertime is getting the streets plowed. And part of the reason for that is because there was not mandatory overtime, which requires DPW workers to come in and help clear the snow. It was totally voluntary and it was difficult to get folks to come in. So this is a concession on the part of the union. The other thing is it also increases employee health care insurance contributions on the part of the union workers somewhat. Let's see. If you're interested, the financial parts are mainly on the first 2 pages of the document. The rest is mostly operational, and it's been reviewed by all the affected department heads, and it seems to be okay with them. But I strongly encourage everybody to take a close look for yourselves if you haven't already. All right.
And were the unions supportive of this as well?
Yes. Howard
They
Ball is
already
here.
have their vote.
They have their vote, okay, perfect.
And Howard Ball is here in person. Who's the head of the union.
Yeah, so it seems like everybody is pleased.
Mhm.
And one thing that we talked about quite a bit was the snow issue.
Okay,
So it's positive. I'm looking forward to the snow, but I'm looking forward to seeing how that resolves some of our issues.
Well, if you believe the Farmer's Almanac, it's going to be very cold and very snowy this winter. Break out the snowshoes, restring them. Let's see, it's the same order here. No, it's not. Okay, the next one, 162. Approving increases as detailed and attached according to the management confidential handbook covering the time period December 31, 2021 through December 31, 2025. Oh, I see. It's run together. So in essence, management confidential for those folks who are new to all this, that means the people who are not members of unions, they tend to be department heads. They tend to serve at the pleasure of the mayor. So not John Toohey, because he's actually hired by the Common Council, or is an employee of the Common Council, I should say. And so Dan Baker, for example, he's management confidential. Kyle in IT, management confidential. And basically what we are doing here is that their pay is going to follow the same basic bumps and so forth as the CSCA contract. All right. And they also, Dan Baker was here to affirm that they were in favor of this and they were happy with this particular increase. Any questions on that? Anybody problems with that one? Good. Okay. I think, this one's run together. Resolution 163, Common Council, City of King, authorizing total project cost of $2,480,000 for the wastewater treatment plant project. It's not on yours?
They're just.
It's the question,
Together,
Yeah.
together.
right under December 31, see resolution 163.
It's like lying down.
Oh, I see, I'm sorry.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
So
Sorry.
this is under the wastewater treatment plant bond. So in effect, it will have a $0 impact for us. But these are things we also have to do. All right, everybody okay with that one?
Yeah.
All right, resolution 164. These now are mostly all going to be from public safety.
Yes.
We go over these, if there's any issue.
No, I've got two of them.
What they, yeah, the ordinances?
It's either adding or taking away handicap parking spot.
Yeah.
Requested by.
Yeah, we're
Yeah.
And Carl, just so you know, we did 124 Green Street.
That's great.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you. Any questions about any of these in particular? If not, would we be able to block these?
Yep. So how about, you want to explain that?
Yeah, so sometimes when there's a set of resolutions that are all on the same topic, we can suspend the rules and vote on them as a block. So instead of reading, Alyssa will have to read each one, but instead of having to vote and going through that part, we can vote on all 5 at once. So what we need is for somebody to rise and say, I'd like to make a motion to suspend the rules in order to vote on resolutions 162 through 166.
So since it was a suggestion, will you be the one to make a motion to suspend?
Okay,
Your luck.
I'll do it.
So good.
So how it will work, since this will be a lot of a few of you, this will be the first time, Rennie will stand up. Okay, I'll make a motion to suspend the rules, to block these, I will ask for a second, then I will call for the vote to suspend our rules, and Rennie will explain it, and then we'll go back into session. I'll have Elisa read all of them, and then, actually, I'll take a motion to block them. And then when that's voted on, and then we'll go through, but I'll explain it all on the floor, so you don't have any confused faces.
162, 168.
164 through 168, since they're all related in some way, and there's not gonna be any conversation, it just moves it along a little quicker. It's all up to you.
All right. Read it, Carl, help me remember. Help me remember.
I will just stare at you.
Yeah.
Have anything to say?
That's a dangerous thing to ask a history professor. You should be very specific about what you want said.
I do have my monthly update, but it's a bunch of things that are mostly small. I'll work backwards, I think. Austin is leaving the Daily Freeman. Actually, he may have already left. Yeah, greener pastures. He didn't tell me, but he said he's very happy.
Okay.
So I don't think he'll be there tomorrow, but I have, let him know that he did a good job. Yeah, and that we'll miss him. He wasn't sure who would be covering us, but obviously it doesn't seem like they have anybody else. Somebody's watching us. So I just wanted to let you know, he did a good job for a year?
Almost.
Yeah. Just remember our November meeting is actually on a Monday, but I'll send out a reminder about that because of election day and because of budget season, we moved it up. I sent you all an email this afternoon. If you could all either let me know that you saw it when I leave here or just send me an email. I'd appreciate that. I will also, I'm working on the budget season. The public hearing will most likely be the 30th of October. I will confirm that once I have the clerk. When the clerk confirms, the clerk's office.
Are costumes optional or required that night?
Attendance is required because it's a statutory public hearing. We do need a quorum because it's a council public hearing. I'll run it unless you really want to.
Nope.
And we need at least 5 of you there. But this is the opportunity where people come and speak on the budget, so it's always important we usually don't have a lot of people come, but I will confirm that date. I'll officially call it, but it looks like, I'm hoping it's gonna be October 30th, because then that gives us longer in November to post all the meetings.
What time do you think?
Either 6:30 or 7. I'll look at the meeting schedule, but I'll try to get that to you as soon as possible. I've been telling you Steve Knox is coming to public safety for a while now. He kept pushing it off, but he is coming in October. I would like to gather any questions that you may have. So Steve Knox is the Director of Building Safety. It's his report that he's supposed to give us, and hopefully we can make this standard on the calendar at this point, but I would like to prepare him. If you have any questions, I've been pulling some, so if you could. Public safety meeting is the 4th. So it's the 25th. Maybe if you could, on the Friday the 13th, if you could send me any questions, just so I could file and give him some time. Obviously, if anything comes up and you have questions, there's no limitation on that. But this way, if we could give him some, I think it's the respectful thing to do with his time. So can I just leave it at that instead of sending an email? If you have questions, thank you.
Can I piggyback on that?
Yeah.
So that reminds me of, we were talking to Steve Knox a while back and looking also at the increase in amount of work building safety has to do. And so we floated the idea, we encouraged him to ask for at least one new employee down there. Now that's going to run into a couple of headwinds, so I'm asking everybody to think about it. So there's some concern among comptrollers at the county and city levels that the economic outlook for the next year is not as rosy as it has been for the last 4 or 5. So that's one thing to keep in consideration. The other is that since Steve Noble has been mayor, we have not increased the tax levy 1 penny. And so to some degree, we have been reducing the tax rate in Kingston, the overall tax rate. That's good because people pay high taxes as it is. On the other hand, we're also entering into a time when it might be a difficult economic period, so it might actually be a good time to look at increasing the tax levy by 1%. We can go up to something like 2%. There's formulas that would tell us the exact number. We've seen that, for example, the police department could probably stand to use another 1 or 2 people. DPW actually has many fewer people than it had before the 2007, 2008 economic downfall. So these are some things to consider. What do you all think looks right in the budget this time? I think there are questions that we haven't had since I've been on the council, at least, because we've tended to have a pretty good rosy outlook. We've tended to be getting the feeling that all the departments had the personnel that they needed, but there are some changes. We may stay with exactly what we've got before. It's just something that I'd like for you at least to consider and think, what you're ready for, what you think needs to happen. Any questions about that?
Well, we'll get a better idea too, once we hear from Steve.
Sure. I'm just guessing. I haven't heard anything, but I'm guessing he would try to keep the tax levy at the same rate that it's been the last 7 years. Right? So, if we do decide that we think for some reason that tax levy needs to be increased to whatever extent possible or we can deem, we'd also have to be sure that we had pretty much consensus on the council. But we wouldn't do it as a surprise to him. I don't mean to say that at all. It would be something we'd have to have close discussions with and be in communication to see what the different concerns are and possibilities. Right?
I have a question about the sort of rollout of the budget. Now, is there a date when the first budget is presented and then the department heads come in and talk and the public hearing follows the action?
I can explain that. So the mayor is going to be presenting it on October 18th.
Oh.
And then from that date, I don't know the time.
Okay.
That's the only information I have.
I think it's usually 1 o'clock.
It's usually at a weird time where the majority of us can't make it, but
Okay.
but that's okay. So.
Oh, I might have to skip a history department meeting to do it.
Oh, what a shame.
So, yeah, I don't know the time, but when I know, if he doesn't let you know first, I will let you know.
Okay.
From that, we have to host, and I know this seems weird, and it is, but our charter requires this. But we can't do anything about it until we host a public hearing.
Okay.
10 days from when, or at least 10 days from when we get the budget,
Okay.
not prior to.
Okay.
So I will officially, and I can't officially call the meeting until I have the budget.
Got it.
So that October 30th date is going to be unofficial. I'll let you know unofficially, but then I can't officially call it until we have the budget in our hands.
We know how he's presenting it.
Last year he did it in person and it was recorded. That's what you meant. So, but then we can't discuss anything until after we have our public hearing. So we're gonna have the public come speak to us based on what the mayor's presentation is.
Okay.
And then after that, I think, I can't remember the exact number, I think it's 6 or 7 meetings where I already have Ernie's schedule, I got John's schedule today, so figure out when the department heads can each come. Some of them, most of them, we have 2 a night. City Hall, we split into 2 nights, so all the department heads who work at City Hall, I'll split between 2 nights. Like DPW is the biggest one, they come with wastewater treatment, KPD and K, I can't remember exactly how I split it, but, and you'll have all of this information. It's technically for the finance and audit committee, however, I think it's prudent for everybody to many of these meetings as possible.
Yeah, because the details are heavy, and it's difficult often to report the tenor of any particular meeting. Plus, if we did that, it would take a long time just to explain everything that was discussed.
And then I will also have 2 wrap-up meetings that we will discuss before we actually vote on it, or the finance and audit meeting at the last wrap-up, we'll vote on it to proceed to the council. Last year, it was a fairly simple budget, and we only made a few tweaks from what the mayor presented, so we didn't have the second, I canceled it. But again, I think it's prudent to have that second in case we have some disagreement and want to bring in anybody else. So I will have 2 wrap-ups, but the last meeting is when the finance and audit committee endorses whatever changes that they have deemed necessary, and then after that, it goes to the the council.
Right, okay. Okay,
Be prepared for some long nights.
Yeah.
so I've heard.
Yes.
Did I miss something?
No, I just had something else to say.
Oh,
On that same date, the 18th, that's when the Public Service Commission will be holding a live session here in Kingston about the request by Central Hudson to increase their rates. It's going to be at the Restorative Justice Center down Broadway, starting at, I believe, at 6 o'clock.
The
The 18th, October 18th.
Not laws and rules.
So- Yeah, but what you can do is select,
You said the 18th?
yes.
Yeah.
I mean, we didn't set it, but it just happens to be that same time. But my point is that, people who are on laws and rules probably can't make it, but other folks who can might want to, or I strongly suggest that you let any of your constituents, I've got several who've had some of these horror stories with Central Hudson. I strongly recommend that you let them know of that event, because the commission has promised that they will hear everybody who shows up. So people might also want to bring a book or a device, because it may take a while to get everybody completely through that process. Go ahead.
And I had one more thing to change the subject, but I did send out like 2 weeks ago, the parking task force applications. And I only heard from 3 of you, and I'm waiting to. So, yeah, if you could do that in the future, if you could let me know if it, like I gave you a little shy of a week to do it. But if you could let me know if you can't make that deadline, I'm happy to adjust. But we've been sitting on this for a while, so I want to thank Carl, Bob, and Sarah who submitted it already.
I thought about it.
Yeah, so if you could read through it, you'll pick your top 3 choices, then I will send it to the mayor. He will choose his 3 choices, and we come back around for the next 3. So there were 14 applicants, and 9 of them will fill the 9.
You got parking issues, look, deep dive in parking.
Yeah, I know, it's an awkward place to come in on with all these issues, but. And if anybody needs me to resend anything, if I've sent it in a spreadsheet, but if you'd rather just email me, I'm happy to plug it in. You all do have the application, so you're 13 in one email and 1 in the, or in one attachment and 1 in the other, because Summer sends it to me separately. So I appreciate if you.
Do you remember the date off the top of your head?
The last one.
It was when he went about business.
Yeah. What?
Yeah, because sorry, the application says if there's significant ties.
There we
go.
Okay. Okay.
But you may not want to because of that. So thank you.
Thanks, Andrew.
Did anybody see the planning board meeting, the recent one, where they talked about Washington, Chiz's place? So the folks know there was an initial presentation, a lot of questions, planning board, a lot of questions, was asking for more information from the developers. So it's a pretty fascinating possibility there. The developers are proposing to put in as many as 60 units. There was some suspicion or some questions about whether they could fit 60 units in the current buildings. They've already actually gutted the insides. So they've already started some of the work. The question is, they're going to have to work with the planning board to figure out how many units they can actually fit in there. They also have to sharpen their message about precisely who the audience is. There's some confusion about whether it's supposed to be kind of permanent, very low, affordable income housing, or is it going to be transitional housing? Is it going to be supportive housing? So there's still some questions, but I just want to let everybody know that is now in process. And I've also understood that there is, with the proposal for the 160 units out of the old jail site, I believe that they're close to having all the final I's dotted, T's crossed and everything, with the possibility of them actually starting to in with construction in the near future.
Watching that, was there some confusion about whether it's a boarding house or not?
There's some question about how to actually define it
Because they have
according to the.
kitchens and they have, I mean, the proposal had kitchens and bathrooms and were, in essence, a small studio apartment.
But it was
Not all
previously used.
It was previously a boarding house.
Yeah, it's complicated by there's another building that family's actually running as a boarding house on that property.
Okay.
So that's what I mean, they need to sharpen the proposal to clarify exactly how many units or what and how they're, going to use it. All right, were there any other reports from any committees folks are on? Any things bubbling up that the rest of us should know?
The dam project at Cooper Lake will be finished October.
Or you're not
27th.
characterizing it?
Oh,
Yes,
awesome.
yeah.
That's great.
Okay.
And the valve project that was tying up some traffic this month, last month is also finished.
Great. Anything else?
I just want to ask if we would be able to do the snow emergency mailer this year.
Ooh, I forgot about that. I did reach out to the summer. Thank you.
You mentioned
I've
snow.
actually gotten, I think you mean about alternate sides and so forth?
Well, just like laying out what like the mailer we sent out 2 years ago.
Yeah, I've gone around, I've actually had a couple of people, and I said, what do you like best about what the city's done in the past while? And they point to the new idea about just parking on either side of the street on even or odd days. So,
Well, I just think it's important, like, there's so many people that still are just moving here, even in the last 3 months that have never been here through winter and know what streets
I was in summer
snow
and,
emergencies, get shut down.
Yeah, I'll send them a email probably Wednesday.
yeah, that's great, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, because we set aside some money for mailers. I think we have used it, but I think just one
Yeah.
for one, right? So this would be the second, so. Look at us being proactive.
All right.
Do we have a public hearing on Wednesday?
Oh, yes, thank you. Yeah, laws and rules, and it is statutory, so we do need 3 of you from you're comfortable running on it. So if you're on laws and rules and you can't be there, then let Rita know.
It's at 6:30.
Yeah.
It's the 18th? No, the 4th.
I
Yeah,
do,
tomorrow.
We're gonna
Oh,
be
where?
here. We're gonna be here.
in chambers. I did have somebody reach out to me.
Am I gonna have IT here?
I have not requested, but if you want, I can.
This is the Jervis Street.
There's
Yeah.
always.
There's no, I was gonna say, that I actually sent you an email earlier,
And so
that
sometimes.
there will be somebody requested to speak virtually. So would you like me to request IT?
Yeah.
Okay, 12 other people.
Just to be on the safe side.
If anybody shows up, it's like.
Yeah, so it's fine. We just have that one speaker. Andrew, so far, virtual.
So far, yeah. Let me just write this before I send.
So, folks, to remember, what's the hearing about?
Sale of Jervis Street.
Jarvis Street.
That's the one that was dancing around about for 6 months, but I think it's so good though.
No, no.
No,
This is different.
no, this is a different street, and we're not, we've actually just been following the charter to T on this, it's a long process.
Okay.
So it's the actual sale of a street.
Got
that isn't been, it's not being used and it hasn't been used. Yeah, it's a paper street.
Got it.
And, yeah, just hasn't been used, I don't remember the last time it was used, it's all old pictures of it, with people using it as a driveway, which is essentially what people are looking at, so we want to purchase it. I don't think anybody in the city minds, but you'll have to find out when you bring in people, but yeah, we're just following
It's very good.
very long, many steps of our charter.
So. Got it. Really should be properly recognized. Yeah.
Thank you for.
Thank you, everybody.
All right, we will call this meeting to a close at 8:00.
Thanks, Elisa.